I've always loved the idea of Zelda, but never really been a fan of the execution that much. I think it's because the first one I played was Link Between Worlds. I had never touched a Zelda game before that, so what I had gathered was that the other Zeldas let you do things that Link Between Worlds did. Stuff like exploring dungeons in any order you want, choosing to rent items instead of buying, and having a neat gimmick like becoming a part of the wall to explore the world in a unique way. I enjoyed Link Between Worlds so much that I went back and made an effort to play games like Wind Waker, Ocarina, and Majora's Mask, and needless to say, they didn't have what I was looking for. Skip ahead a few months, Breath of the Wild is announced, everyone goes crazy over being able to jump off of your horse and shoot arrows in slow-mo. I'm convinced, I play the game. While I was playing the game, everyone I knew who had it was talking about how it was a bigger and better Link Between Worlds. They were sharing their findings in the world and kept talking about their encounters with Lynels, Guardians, and other random monsters that they ran into. They all loved the game. I could not have been more bored with it. I found the world to be so barren. So what, there's a new Bokoblin camp 5 minutes away from the last, and there are a bunch of shrines scattered around the world, and that makes the game a 10 out of 10? All I ever found myself doing was going straight from Divine Beast to Divine Beast, completing shrines along the way and ending the bland experience by defeating Calamity Ganon in an anticlimactic boss fight. I remember thinking, how is this different than any other Zelda? Why is it receiving so much praise? If anything, this is more boring because the time it takes to get from place to place is much longer. Why do people enjoy this game? The game was nothing but fanbait to me. People asked for a bigger world in the next Zelda game and the developers delivered, but the world wasn't filled with anything interesting. Just a few monster camps and a giant beast you can try to defeat here and there. All in all, I found the game to be overhyped, overpraised, and overly forgettable. Cut to December of 2018. I have a YouTube channel now and I'm thinking of ideas for videos to put out in 2019. I'm at my desk thinking of something interesting that I can talk about. Why don't I talk about why I didn't enjoy Breath of the Wild? I felt like it would provide a new perspective on the game and it might stir up a discussion too. I've got nothing to lose by doing it, so why not? I boot up the game, hit record, and almost immediately I find something I remember disliking during my first playthrough. A big thing, something that hits you right in the face when you start a new save file. The Great Plateau. It starts off nice, being able to walk out into this giant world and start exploring without being told where to go or what to do, but then...
Link. Head for the point marked on the map in your Sheikah slate.
Awesome, so immediately I'm given a point on my minimap and I'm told where to go and what to do. Nice. Why couldn't the game just tell me from the start to go to the Sheikah Tower, or guide me there through some other means like the environment, like maybe having a maze I have to escape and the first thing I find when I do is the Sheikah Tower? Instead, it gave me 5 minutes to explore and start having fun, only to stop me and basically say, no, you're going the wrong way. This is where the real game is. It keeps happening over and over again too. Like, for instance, right when you get to the tower and activate it, some old man comes out of nowhere and randomly tells you to find 4 shrines and complete the challenges found within them in exchange for his paraglider. But I was going to go to the shrine anyway since it's the first thing you see when you activate the tower, so I'll ask again, why does this game insist on being unnecessarily intrusive? I was heading there anyway, and the shrine's guardian could have just informed me that I need to find 3 other shrines if I want off the plateau. Instead, this guy shows up and just vomits obvious information at you. So I complete the first 4 shrines, beat some bokoblins along the way, and meet with the old man one last time. The exposition he provides you with is so boring. I get it, the premise of the game needed to be shared with the players so they know what their mission is. But this random guy outing himself as the dead king of Hyrule and constantly telling you that Calamity Ganon is horrifying and destructive instead of the game showing you feels mind-numbingly boring. Getting the paraglider to get off the Great Plateau took roughly 2 hours, at which point I was ready to throw in the towel. I just didn't feel like continuing playing a game I already didn't enjoy before and wasn't enjoying now just to make a negative video that I knew most people would disagree with. But I figured I'll give this game one more chance. I'll play a bit more past the plateau and see if things change. And as you probably guessed thanks to the title, they did. First thing I decided to do when I got off the plateau was head to Kakariko Village, where you're supposed to find Impa who will give you further instructions pertaining to defeating Calamity Ganon. From there, the game finally opens up and lets you do what you want. Like, really, whatever you want. You're told to head to the 4 corners of Hyrule and conquer the 4 different divine beasts in order to weaken Calamity Ganon and be able to fight him yourself. Or you can pursue your locked memories by heading to Hateno Village and meeting with Pura, a lab technician who can help you access more of your Sheikah Slate's power. The distance from Kakariko Village to Hateno Village really isn't that long, especially because at this point you likely have a horse, but along the way I just ran into stuff. Shrines, towers, enemy camps, giant enemies that I would mark down on my map to defeat later on, random assassins, hidden caves with treasure, spots where I could cook different recipes. And that is when the game finally resonated with me. It wasn't about getting from point A to B, but rather the stuff you find between point A and B. At this point onwards, Breath of the Wild managed to strike an incredible balance between thrilling adventure and a calming journey. Like I said earlier, on my first playthrough of the game, I found Hyrule to be a barren wasteland. Riding your horse from Divine Beast to Divine Beast was boring, but during this playthrough, I realized that's because I made it boring. I was suffering from such a strong case of tunnel vision that I didn't take the time to explore what the game had to offer out of the main storyline. For instance, let's compare two moments in both playthroughs. During my first playthrough, I got to Hateno Village, talked with Pura, who told me that I could bring items to her to upgrade my runes, went back to Impa, who told me to find specific spots in the world where I could recover my memories, only for me to ignore both of them and focus on beating the Divine Beasts. I didn't talk to people in the village, I didn't take on side quests, I didn't bother speaking more to Impa or Pura to see what else they had to offer. I didn't do anything. On this playthrough, I spoke to Pura more and noticed that just by going out of my way to defeat small guardians, I already had enough materials to upgrade a few of my runes. I learned about the Hyrule Compendium, which I could use to track down materials in the world. I found a quest where I had to find 10 resting crickets, which allowed me to put my compendium to good use. Then, on my way back to Impa, I found a shrine blocked off by thorns, and I had no fire arrows on me to burn them down. So instead, I set up a whole campfire, lit my torch, and set it ablaze to clear a path. I also found a pot to cook stuff in, where I started experimenting with different recipes and cooked a bunch of food that would boost my health, stamina, defense, and attack. All of this is stuff I didn't even bother thinking of trying out on my first playthrough of the game back in 2017 when it first came out, and if you've played Breath of the Wild, then you know, or at least can imagine, how boring that would make the game. Which of course explains why I was so bored and why everyone else was amazed with the stuff they managed to find just by exploring a bit. At this point, after all the shrines, cooking, exploring, fighting, and side questing, I was roughly 7.5 hours into the game and I still hadn't even gotten to the first Divine Beast. But not because the game just takes that long for you to get anywhere, but because it allows you to take that long before doing what it tells you to do. Unlike the Great Plateau where you follow the king's orders and don't have much else to do, if anything at all, you can do almost anything you want in the rest of Hyrule. That applies to the areas where the Divine Beasts are located too. When you get to the first Divine Beast area, which in my case was Zora's Domain, you would think that completing everything in the area only entails talking to the faction that lives in the area of Hyrule, finishing a dungeon, and then leaving because there's nothing else to do. Again though, Breath of the Wild finds a way to make tasks that would have been repetitive and mundane in older Zelda games to be deep and complex here. The first thing I was told to do in Zora's Domain is get chalk arrows to be able to even access the Divine Beast. Thing is, the only area where you can find chalk arrows in this corner of Hyrule just so happens to be protected by a giant beast called a Lynel. Now, at this point, when I saw a monster I knew I couldn't take on, I would mark it down on my map for later and leave it alone. But this time, I had no other choice but to head straight into this monster's domain. Technically, there's the option to sneak through the Lynel's home and not engage in combat with it, but I chose to take a more direct approach. And although I died a lot, I ended up defeating the Lynel, which was a whole experience of its own that you just can't get from other games like Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker. In older Zelda games, a dungeon was a dungeon. In this game, there's layers to each area, and you can't just waltz into a dungeon, beat a boss, and head out to the next one. If you try to play the game that way, you'll end up like me during my first playthrough, unentertained and frustrated. The Divine Beast itself was interesting, but definitely not a highlight of my experience with the game so far. It was a nice challenge with an interesting boss at the end, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just a shrine that takes more time. Maybe they shot themselves in the foot by having so many shrines in the game, making the Divine Beast feel less special, maybe they didn't. Depends on who you ask, I guess. Nonetheless, the game continued to surprise me with new things to do by telling me that there was more to explore and do in Zora's Domain after I beat the Divine Beast. The game opens up a bunch of side quests in the area after completing a Divine Beast, just like the ones in Hateno and Kakariko Village. This is yet another way the game adds a feeling of liveliness to the world, since the people of Zora's Domain, for instance, aren't just useless NPCs who thank you for saving them after beating the dungeon. They still have a lot of issues, and if you're willing to stick around and help them out, you not only end up with a lot more rupees in your pocket, but you also get to have more fun taking on giant beasts and even discovering secret shrines only unlocked through side quests. I don't know what changed between my two playthroughs of Breath of the Wild, my second one's still ongoing by the way. Maybe there was a change in perspective when it came to playing games. Maybe because I played it during exam season my first time and during a holiday my second time, I just had more time to mess around in the world. Maybe this, maybe that, whatever the reason behind my increased enjoyment of the game this time around is, I'm glad I came back to give it another shot. In a way, this game is like Animal Crossing to me. It's just a calming game I can play where I explore a world, talk to strangers, help them out, and share my experiences with others who have played the game as well. I'm really glad I came back to give this game a shot, and I'm a lot more excited now to see what the next Zelda game is like, knowing that it's in development and is most likely going to be like this one, if not better. Thanks for watching. Hopefully your 2019 is going great. Mine's been pretty relaxing so far, and hopefully it stays that way since 2018 was a bit of a dumpster fire. I've got some cool new stuff coming for this year. Hopefully it all pans out, so stay tuned, but until then, I'll see you next time.